Okay, welcome to This Week in Firefighting Today, the weekly roundtable. We meet every Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We discuss all things fire service related. This week we're going to be talking about some of the changes that the panel members have seen during the course of their years in the business. We do ask everybody, if you are watching us live on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to tweet, if you're live tweeting tonight, if you use the hashtag FFTChange, Firefighting Today Change, we can do that. And I believe tonight, if you leave a comment on the events page, we can also see that and bring that right into the conversation. So we'll get started right away. So I am Peter Lamb. I'm the author of PeteLamb.com, and I'm the host of the Firefighter Training Podcast. So we'll get started here tonight. Adam, let's start with you.
Good evening, guys. Adam Ganley, coming from Kellogg, Iowa, captain on the Kellogg Volunteer Fire Department.
All right, Ethan.
Hi, Pete. Ethan Bansek, Lorain, Ohio, student of the trade.
All right, Jim.
Good evening, Jim Murphy, retired Orange County Fire. Currently the chief of training for Sims Share and on the road teaching when I'm not fishing.
All right, John.
Hi, John Fisher, Battalion Chief, San Diego Fire Rescue, out here in California, and so I got to point out that Jim's from Orange County, Florida, on the other side there.
Touche. And Mick. Mick, are you with us? I'm not hearing anything from Mick. I don't know. He's still struggling with his connection. First and foremost in the audience, as we broadcast this today, I don't know when you watch it, but Johnny's reminding to wish everybody a happy Father's Day. So certainly we appreciate that, John, and glad to have you point that out to us. We don't know when it'll be watched, but it is Father's Day today as we're recording it. All right, so here's the point. What things have changed since you started in the fire service? And I thought we would just kind of run the panel here and see what we could do. And we'll kind of talk about what was the change, how did it affect you, how did it affect the fire service, and that's what we're talking about here tonight. So let me throw a softball out there. I'll throw a softball. When I started in the fire service in 1976, all we wore was three-quarter length boots. So that's the softball. I'm sure many of you are in that category. What did that mean? Well, it meant a couple of things. Our bunker pants, and I don't know how many of you did this, but it was pretty common. Our bunker pants were actually called a night hitch. That was a night hitch. You only used that for nighttime. That's what you did. And you certainly in those days brought your cancer-laden, benzene-ridden, carcinogen-loaded pants and put them right next to your bed in the living quarters at that point in time. That was kind of the norm at that point. So three-quarter boots, what did they do? I think they were lighter. I don't think they gave us any more mobility. I think it was a positive change that protected us. But I always, till I just left the job a couple of years ago, I always kept a pair of three-quarter length boots around for high water and flooding. They did have a purpose without question. So one of the changes I saw was three-quarter length boots, and I'm sure many of you had that same experience. John, what's another change you suffered, or do you want to comment on that one?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I started as a volunteer, we didn't even have boots issued to us. We had 6 pairs of them on the engine, and that was it. And if you weren't one of the first 6 guys, all guys at that time, then you didn't get a pair of boots. So you just had a coat and a helmet, maybe. I think one of the other big changes I've seen going from there is the change from using only 2.5 to changing to 4 inch or 5 inches large diameter hose as a supply line. That's really affected our water supply, but it's also kind of screwed up our parking a little bit at incidents. So sometimes there's some bad with the good. We just need to kind of be a little more careful about how we deal with that.
Yeah, no, all the changes we're going to talk about are certainly adaptable, but that's a good one. And you did bring back memories. I hadn't even really thought about that. As a young volunteer, you're right, the gear was stored on the apparatus. It was crazy. I hadn't really paid attention to that, but that's a good one. Jim, let's talk about some changes. What have you seen in your career? How did it affect you, and how did it affect the service? Jim, you might be muted. Jim, you might be muted. There you go. Try it again, Jim.
There we go. I clicked it, Chief, but it didn't want to cooperate. Some of the changes that we've already discussed. Obviously, the three-quarter boots. I remember before the three-quarter hip boots, we didn't, in the daytime, wear any at all. Now, we all know the ramifications of that. But having said that, it did give you one advantage. That was getting water on the fire fast. But obviously, we wouldn't want to dare use the three-quarter hip boots today. Many changes, but the most, I think, probably the best change in the fire service for me has been technology. Obviously, getting information out there faster. Information is flowing faster to us than the books can be written.
All right, so the flow of information, sure, I think that's a good one, Jim. Flow of info. I know I'm going to go out of order, but I can't. I got to go back to. We'll save that, John. I got that screen share, so I'm going to jump back to you. Let me run in the panel, and we'll jump right over to you. Ethan, you've been around watching the fire service for 4 or 5 years. What are you seeing nationally? You're a student of the trade. What do you see as a change that's occurred?
Well, definitely, like you said, Pete, change from three-quarter boots. Also, like Jim said, technology and how much it's progressed in even the past 5 years. And also changing from 1.5-inch hose used for fire attack up to 1 3/4, and even in some cases 2-inch.
Yeah, okay, so attack line's changing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a good one. Adam, what do you got?
Well, I can't really weigh in on the boot wise. It was way before my time. I didn't get my career until 2001 when I got in. But going as a volunteer and my volunteer world is recruitment. We've really struggled in our neck of the woods here is actually getting volunteers to actually want to do the job.
All right. So what when you say the change in volunteers, you're saying there's a greater emphasis on recruitment now than when you started? Is that the change no, there's less.
We just can't get the recruitment.
Okay.
Back when probably majority of you guys got on back in the 70s, 80s, you guys had probably people knocking at the door, where today in my world where I'm at, we don't have that. It's hard to find the volunteers, the time they have to give to the department with, whether it's training or, whatever the case may be. But we do have a little bit of a struggle on recruitment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All right, let me, since I am the master softball thrower, I would say that I went probably 20 years of my career and never answered a carbon monoxide alarm. There was no such thing as a carbon monoxide alarm when I started. I'm sure we had carbon monoxide calls, but there certainly wasn't any carbon monoxide detection, or certainly the lack of metering. That was just unheard of. We were probably in the days of bringing in a canary. So I'm going to say that carbon monoxide detection and metering was maybe a choice for me. All right, John, we got the photo. Let's hear the story with there's the gear on the trucks. I love it. And the air packet.
There it is. That's a 1958 Mack, first fire engine I ever rode in the early 80s as a cadet back in Connecticut. A lot of changes you see there. All the gear was on the rig. Enclosed cabs. You don't see too many open cab rigs anymore. Most of those have been replaced. I think we were running 1.5-inch hose with 2.5-inch supply line with a Navy all-purpose nozzle, and then I'm gonna switch that. I'm gonna try and switch out. There we go. And then we had the occasional Navy all-purpose nozzles there. It just so happened that the department had joined a Navy base, so I'm not quite sure where those came from. But we had a task force tip nozzle. So a lot of changes. We had the old foam applicators for the Navy all-purpose nozzles that we use for things like car fires. Still, sometimes wish we had those on the rigs. So there's been there's been a change or two there. But the bottom line is the basics have pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah, the way we operate, I think, primarily has stayed the same. I think there's some discussion about that now, but certainly we're seeing that. So you had a mouthful there. We'll go back to some of those, see if we can revisit some of those. Jim, we hit a bunch. We talked a little bit about what was the first apparatus you ever got on?
Chief, we had a 19-something Darley front mount pump. We primarily, for most fires, used booster lines. That was our primary attack. If you went to an inch and a half, that was a big fire. A blitz fire was a 2.5 inch line.
Yeah, booster lines. I remember as a first paid firefighter in an all volunteer place. One of the very first fires I went to was driving a 1955 Ford, which was about 22 years old at that point. And first line into a basement fire was a booster line. So I get it. And you know what? Quite frankly, I'm kind of glad of that change. I'm glad we figured that out. that wasn't the thing to do. Ethan, what else?
How about all the new research and new science that's going on? And when I say new, realize it's not new. Like John Dixon said last week or the week before, from 1830s.
Yeah, and I think part of what's going on here, and I think Jim alluded to it, and both John alluded to it. I can remember getting on the job, and there was no way to get information. I mean, I marvel every week that we do this stuff. We got from coast to coast, from Florida to California to Massachusetts and the Midwest here, Iowa and Ohio. And whoever thought of trying to get information? It was all hard copy snail mail. So the ability for research is much greater. So that's a good one. Adam, what else? You got anything? Anything has changed equipment-wise? How about the history of your department? If you looked back, I mean, what were the things they were doing?
Talking to some of the guys that had been on here for a while, what I call the vets, they did touch on the old 3/4 boots, and like you guys were talking, the booster reel, they were using that for the initial tack line. So, things have changed here on the way they operate for the good. Another thing too in our fire service is our fire gear itself, our bunker gear. It's allowing us to go in further, deeper. It's a lot better than back when you guys started back in the 70s and 80s, where you just had the long coat going over the boots. So I mean the gear's getting a lot better than what it has been.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that my first fire coat was made out of was canvas duck. There was no flame retardant, per se. It was just a duck canvas fire coat. How about one that? How about thermal imaging? We never had thermal imaging. That was, there's a whole generation of firefighters coming on today. There's folks that are going to watch this movie and say, get rid of these dinosaurs out here. But, I just want to tell them that one of the things I've come to appreciate is how we do business because of the technology that is there. And I think thermal imaging is certainly something that needs to be talked about as something newer in the fire service. We had a couple of comments from the gallery here. Let me do those just before we go on. So this guy, Mick Myers, that we all know and love, he was having some connection problems. 1980s, 3/4 boots, rubber-coated cotton duck coats, and his Fireball gloves. Great catch, Mick. Does everybody know what we're talking about with the Fireball gloves? No, I see some heads nodding. Let me come back. Fireball gloves were orange, ill-fitting plastic rubber gloves. John, if you're on that one, I see you searching there. If you can find it, that'd be great. If you can pull up a photo, but these rubberized gloves. I guess the deal was they were waterproof, but yeah, that's a great memory. That's an awesome one. Here's another one from Mick. When he was talking about heavy rescue, he was using hemp rope. I also remember use hemp rope, wood blocking tackles, creating a hauling system to building an A-frame and some timber. Excellent. And I think I'm going to save your SCBA one for a minute, Mick. But let's see. John may have the Fireball gloves for us. Hold on. Yes, that is a home run. That was the glove of choice for the fire service. And you guys can see that is actually rubberized. So if you got in a play, two things would happen. A, you would get water in the wristlet and it would run down inside with nowhere to go, and you would steam yourself. That was one of them. Or the glove would actually just melt to your hand. Either or. It was. I'm pretty happy we got rid of that. I'm pretty happy we made that
no
change.
Complaints. Actually, those had just been phased out when I came in.
Okay. Yeah, we had them. Apparently, you could buy them by the dump truck load because we used to get boxes and boxes and boxes, and they were all kept there. That's a great one, Mick. And Mick's got a couple of other comments we'll get to about SCBA and so forth. What else you got, John? I saw your apparatus and I raised you a thermal camera. What do you got?
I got a couple here. Lane Woolery's not on, but he's texting me ideas here. So
all right. We'll give him the assist.
Got a couple he just shot to me here. Our ventilation tactics, blowers, switching from just simply electric blowers with negative ventilation only to positive pressure with gas blowers.
Yep.
Pretty big one. Just the quality of our lights, our hand lights, is huge. And then he says the one he misses the most is the old Spicer 6-speed transmission. So you don't find too many standard transmission fire apparatus anymore.
No, absolutely. That was the measure of whether you were a driver or not. If you could drive it and double clutch it and all that, that was a badge of honor, I guess. I can remember being a young firefighter, and we had a guy that actually put like a half a glass of water on the cab floor, and it was a standard shift truck. And he said, "All right, your job is to drive the truck and not spill the glass of water." Yeah, like that was going to happen. It took a while before that happened, I'll tell you what. Jim, what else you got?
Well, Chief, it's funny you should mention that because that was part of our engineer's test, was to have that water and to be able to actually drive the truck, double clutch, whatever you had to do, but you didn't spill the water. And it was a small volunteer department, so the fire chief was riding shotgun to make sure.
Yeah,
but the evolution of EMS, of course, has been a tremendous asset to the fire service. Equipment, you mentioned thermal imaging cameras. There's just so much, and you look at some of the comments that Ethan has made. Even in the last 4 or 5 years, there's just been dramatic changes, all for the good. The thing that offends me the most is when I hear comments like the fire service's 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress, and I would submit there's been more progress in the fire industry than any other.
I think that's true. Ethan, you see where we're going here? You see how we're kind of round robin? What else you thinking?
How about changing building materials and building construction?
Okay, so where we work, sure, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a good one. Lightweight, not lightweight per se, but pre-engineered
Right.
building systems is a real good one. Adam.
I'm kind of looking. I'm not a huge hazmat guy, but I think how we handle hazmat situations today. I'm sure they probably differ than back when you guys got on, and how today we're containing the spill and probably not getting the hose out and washing it down.
Yeah, I can tell you that I was dispatched to more than one wash down in my day. They sent you out at a car accident to do a wash down. In terms of hazmat, there's a funny thing. Ethan, if you're an old book collector, go looking for a bunch of old DOT guidebooks, because the older DOT guidebooks are pretty funny. Funny, not funny, haha, but funny, peculiar, in that I think when I first got on, the evacuation distance for propane was about 1,500 feet away. That was the recommended distance. And then somebody watched a piece go about 2,000 feet, and then it was 2,000, and then it was a half a mile, and then it was 3,300. So we don't really learn that well, but when we're given examples, we're really awesome about that as we learn. So it's interesting to see. That's a good one about hazmat, certainly. Let's bring in Mick with another comment. SCBA was demand valve, and we kept them in boxes in the compartments. The inside crew would put them on, but everyone operating outside went without. And I would tell you, Mick, that unfortunately, we had a very limited number of SCBA in boxes, and some people went inside with them, and some people went inside without, unfortunately. Certainly nothing I'm proud of by any stretch of the imagination. But in terms of SCBA guys, I would just tell you that one of the first, and this was an old model when I got on, but one of the first SCBA I ever used was what they called a silver dollar regulator. It was a round regulator, and the alarm was they put it in line in the hose from the cylinder to the hose. It was an actual bell. It was an air-actuated bell, and that was your alarm for your SCBA. So just SCBA in general changed dramatically. So thank you for that, Mick. The other one I'll throw in is, we had, I think in '99, I think after the Worcester fire, where we lost the 6 firefighters, I think the emphasis on rapid intervention was just phenomenal. I think there was a big upsurge. I think we knew about it. I think we used it, but I think there was a big upsurge in rapid intervention. So I'll toss that one out there, John.
Yeah, kind of riffing off of that a little bit. Not only rapid intervention, but the whole USAR world. Mick talked about it a little bit, but there wasn't really a lot of that until the mid-'90s, and then USAR pretty much came into its own. People kind of started seeing what we were doing after the World Trade Center, that kind of thing, and now it seems to be the hurricane tour, hurricane after hurricane, or tornadoes, where firefighters from around the country and different USAR teams are getting out there.
Yeah, no, that's a good one.
There was always heavy rescues in a lot of places like that, but working together and being able to have the equipment that we have now and come together for multiple operational periods, that kind of thing. Never something we did before.
Yeah, no, I'm embarrassed I don't know the trigger point to that. I mean, we had USAR teams before 9/11. What was the origin? Was it hurricanes, John?
I think a lot of it started out here in California with the earthquakes. The Loma Prieta quake in '89 it seemed to be kind of the trigger, which was before I got on the job here in San Diego. But that sort of seemed to be the trigger. Seemed early '90s was when we started seeing them out here, and then it kind of grew into a national system.
Yeah, most of the stuff, we tease about East Coast, West Coast, but I got to tell you, it generally starts there before it gets here. So
well, of course, you also had Virginia Beach and Miami-Dade, I think it was, down in Florida that had teams that used to do a lot of their international stuff.
Metro-Dade went to Mexico. Yeah, Metro-Dade went to Mexico several times.
Yeah, right. '85, I think that was.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let me just go back here for 1 second. We do have some viewers here, so let me just get that up there again. If you are watching us live, feel free to leave a YouTube comment. Feel free to comment right on the events page. We should be able to talk about that. And if you want to, if you use the hashtag FFTChange, we'll be able to bring your comment right into the discussion. So thanks for the folks that are watching tonight. Jim, what else you got? Got to be some changes from when you got on. There's got to be. We're throwing some around here, but there's got to be some we're not thinking of.
Well, I mean, I don't want to have this turn into a commercial, but obviously the ability to do simulations, recreate fires gone by, or target structure errors. But back to what John was just saying, I think one of the most important changes that I've seen, and I've got the experience up close and personal, working every hurricane basically for 30 some odd years, was the ability to go into any community and be speaking the same lingo. And we go back to PDR 5 signed by President Bush in 2004 with the NIMS ICS command structure has been very, very instrumental. I know it after the director of FEMA, let's say, was relieved, I'll just leave it at that, and we had to go into Katrina. One of the first things that we had to do was actually have a NIMS ICS class because folks weren't compliant in 04. It was mandated in 2004, but that didn't necessarily mean that everyone was on the same page. Today I'm seeing that, whether it's Fire Scope or whether it's NIMS ICS or whether it's another organizational flow chart, if you will, we are all speaking the same language.
Yeah, absolutely. I think NIMS is a great catch. That's a good
And I learned that the hard way when I went out west and ordered a tanker, thinking I was going to get a truck full of water, and it turned out to be an aircraft.
Yeah, you got to be careful what you say.
Can relate to that.
Yeah. You got to be careful what you say. Let me just get something to Mick. Mick, if you're listening, if you email me that photo, I will try to share it. Mick's trying to share a photo and he's got some trouble. So Mick, if you can email me the photo, I will attempt to share it for you. I will preview it before I push share. I just want you to know that. Ethan, what else you got?
How about the evolving fuel loads into plastics and synthetics and rubbers?
Yeah, so in addition to the building components, we're talking about the fuel loads have clearly changed. No question about that. I think that's a good one. Adam, what else?
Jim hit mine. It was the ICS, the whole incident command deal. We're really hitting it hard in our county here, so I was going to chime in on the ICS.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in fact, Johnny picked up on that as well. Johnny's out there in the audience. We got a great audience tonight, a lot of participation. John, you're actually right. Because of the delay, we just caught up with you here. So Incident Command, ICS, so on. I think that's excellent. And you're talking about mutual aid, Johnny. I think that's a great one. I think there is an increased use of mutual aid now, and I think that's gotten better. There are still some pockets where mutual aid is frowned upon, but it certainly has gotten better. All right, let me throw out another softball here. What about the automobile extrication tools? Automobile extrication tools. Jim, you're there. John, you're probably there too. Did anybody use like the old Hearst ginormous tool that weighed about 70 pounds or something? Because I remember the very first piece I got on actually did not have the jaws. We were in 76. We were in a small community. We still using Porter Power at that point. The old Porter Ferguson Porter Power kit is what we were doing. Basically, a Hydra ram with a little spreader on it is basically what it is now. It's like the rabbit tool, except it had different tips on it. But automobile extrication equipment, certainly I would throw as one of the changes in the course of my career and how dramatic it is. John? Sure.
That's it's still part of our physical abilities test today is a 73-pound simulated Hearst spreader set. that's part of the test, and that's how much the thing weighed. So stuff's got a lot lighter. We didn't back then have a RAM at all, so that there were things that we do today as a matter of routine that we couldn't do. The struts that we're using for support and airbags and all that kind of stuff we didn't have. I think we had, when I first got on the job here in San Diego, we did have airbags on the trucks, some of the trucks. Now they all have them. The Rescue 42 jacks and that kind of thing. But also, just to kind of move on from there, some of the technology that we've had to get into. I mean, it used to be that a Ford, Chevy, or Dodge was pretty much the same, and then you had those lighter fur-end cars that tended to open up a little bit differently with the jaws. And now between airbags and all kinds of stuff, hybrids and that kind of stuff, just a ton of different things we got to think about with extrication now. But the other side of it is that we're going back in the direction that we used to. Now we've started using the KED quite a bit more often, extricating people. And it seems like there was probably 10 or 15 years there we didn't use the KED. So now we're back to that.
Yeah, I think, EMS has certainly changed. The way we do EMS has changed. It's everybody's on a board, stand them up on a board. No, you don't need to do that. And assessment has changed. All of that sort of stuff, I think, is very valid. And the cars, the automobile designs, excellent stuff. Jim, you're up. What do you got?
Well, I like the fact that John is using, I assume that's the old Hearst 29A model. That's where I started. The equipment has changed quite a bit, and that's all good. But it is incumbent upon us now, I mean, looking at times gone by, to look at the new hybrid cars and the effects on them with regard to fire, with regard to extrication, the do's and the don'ts. But if I can go back to what a previous comment you made about us dinosaurs, I think if dinosaurs were progressive, they'd still be around today. So there's a wealth of experience here, and there are some folks that have been around the block a few times, but like John, are up to the most current techniques and tools and equipment that are available today.
Yeah, no, I my sense of humor, Jim. I calling us dinosaurs, but
no offense taken.
I certainly am a student of the trade, much like Ethan, and I'm trying to stay on top of it several days a week here, without question, no doubt about it. Ethan, what do you got?
How about the change in tools from not using piercing nozzles or using them very limitedly, and Bresnan distributors, to using Detroit door openers, and now switching over to hydrorams and rabbit tools.
Okay, the Detroit door opener. There's a blast from the past. We never had one of those, but that's a good one. I like it. That's a good one. Adam?
I think back at the auto extrication tools, I was trained on some Hearst. I'm sure it's not the same ones you guys use, but they weren't very light on the first department. And when I moved where I'm at now, we ended up getting those as a loaner from the same department that I was on, and they were slow on opening. We only had a spreader, no cutters, and then we ended up getting enough money to actually purchase our own extrication tools, and the difference in them, how light they are to how much faster they move, and like they were talking with the hybrids, the car construction, how they're building the cars today and putting I think what's that boron stuff down the A pillars and stuff. If you got the older tools, they say they don't work very well.
Right. Yeah, no, you know what? We ought to do a whole night on extrication here. There's probably enough material to do a whole episode. Here's a good one by Mick, who's doing this. The first apparatus he was assigned to was a 1954 open cab American LaFrance aerial, no power steering, unsynchronized transmission, and the outriggers were screw jacks. I was not assigned to that, Mick, but we had one of those in the town where I started. We had one of those very same apparatus with the old screw jacks. So, maybe that's just that's one we can throw on the list, is the change in aerial equipment, from the straight ladder to the tower ladder to in the late 60s, early 70s, the big deal with aerial equipment was a snorkel. That was a big deal to, have a snorkel, an articulated arm in the middle. So that was something else. All right, I've been saving a couple. I've been sandbagging here a couple of them. So I don't know. I think I can maybe get John and Jim on this one anyway. When I started on the fire department, we actually rode the back step of the fire truck. And I'm certainly glad that one changed for the better. But yeah, we actually were riding on the back step of the truck, and it was not a very good thing to do. We never tossed anyone off the truck. My funniest story about backstep, it's much funnier now than it was when it happened. We were on the back step of the truck, and it's funny that John showed that pumper that he did. The driver was not the best driver in the world. He actually clipped a phone pole, and it took one of those hard suction lines right off the side of the truck, like right by our heads, which was really kind of exciting. It was a little more exciting than going to the call. So that was a little different for us. But riding the back step has changed. John, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a little before my time, but that Mac I showed the picture of, we'd ride two in the jump seats there, one sitting down and one standing up, and so that was pretty much standard. We didn't ride anybody in the back step back then, but pretty much in the time I've been working for San Diego, it's been all just 4 per company, seated and belted, although not necessarily the most, enclosed cab sort of rigs. We still had one fully open cab.
Yeah,
one fully open cab. In fact, it was a snorkel. When I first started working here, the rest, some of the other engines had a barely enclosed cab. Some of the old you guys don't have a lot of Crowns back in New England, but pretty standard out here for ourselves. Orange County, LA County, LA City, all had Crowns back in the late 60s, early 70s. So that's and they had not much of a cab.
Yeah, Crown was.
We didn't have to worry about weather too much out here, but yeah, I can definitely remember being in a couple of snowstorms back east.
Yeah. In fact, the ladder truck that Mick was referencing, the department that we had in town, actually put a fiberglass/plastic cab over the top of it. Ruined the whole appearance of that it was a great looking truck, but they didn't do much for it. But I guess they got tired of the inside windshield wipers, which is pretty common. So, Jim, what do you got?
Well, Chief, I kind of same position you were in. Probably my first 3 years, certainly 2, were riding tailboard. We'd have 3 on tailboard, 2 in the cab of the truck. The air packs were carried exteriorly on side mounted on the truck. There were 2, so do the math. We had 5 people, 2 air packs. We did have a Scott sling pack in the officer's seat if there had to be a rescue effected immediately. But short of that, we rode tailboard. And the other day I was just thinking about this, so strangely you brought it up. At least in our department, and I'm talking thousands of calls, with firefighters are riding tailboards without incident that I'm aware of. Now, I would never advocate us doing that today, but why is it that we were able to do that without incident? Do people disrespect a fire truck driving down the road today less than they did then? I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, the incidents were out there. The department where I just recently left here in North Attleboro, in the 50s, late 50s, they actually lost a member. There was a line of duty by a member going off the back step, got a major head injury, and died some days later. But that was in the late 50s, so it was out there. But again, that's a long time ago. Ethan, what else you got?
How about going back and touching on ladders? The use of the whole rescue device, also known as Pompier ladder, of using that to retiring that in, I believe, 94, 95.
Right. There was a New York City actually made a rescue that late in the game. I want to say the guy's name was Binns, Henry Binns, if I'm not mistaken. But if anybody, here's the commercial. If Jim can sneak in a shameless SimsU share, I'm going to sneak in a PeteLiam.com history. If you go and look at the Pompier ladder, there is a rescue there. That story of that rescue was written by Chief Jim Blanchard, and it's got the history of that Pompier ladder. Great tool. Now, some departments, I just asked John. John, does San Diego do any at the training academy? Do they make them climb Pompiers for confidence?
No, we haven't. We didn't even use those when I came through the academy. We did not too long before I came on. We used to have what was called the LA Locker ladder. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those or not before.
It doesn't ring a bell.
But rather than your the locks or the dogs that you think of that are spring-loaded, these ones were controlled by the halyard. So you had to, as you extended the ladder, get just the right flick with the halyard to get the dogs to flip up and lock over the rungs. So a little bit of a challenge there to get the hang of that. I don't think we actually used them too much in the academy, but that's those are kind of old school. Another kind of brings to mind another concept of the old becoming new again is all of our new trucks are now carrying 40s or 45s with the Tormentor pulls or the Banger pulls on them, and we got away from that for a lot of years. I think our 1980 Seagraves had a 45 on it, and made I didn't, but a couple of guys made a number of good rescues right after I came on, and then we didn't buy anything bigger than a 35-foot ladder for a while. After a couple of incidents where we needed them, we're back to buying them again.
Yeah, that's a difficult ladder to use. I asked about that because some cities, of course, here, one of the greatest ladder departments in the world is the city of Boston. I would say Boston and San Francisco are probably two of the premier ladder departments. In training, they still require the recruits to use a Pompier ladder in training. There's none on the apparatus anymore. And the city of Providence here in Rhode Island, the capital city in Rhode Island, also sends their recruits and requires them to do Pompier training. So, interesting point. We're not using them anymore, Ethan, but there are still departments in 2014 that are actually training with them as a confidence builder and, strength builder and all those sorts of things. Character building, I think they call it. Adam, what do you got?
Kind of go off off subject a little bit, but I think in our volunteer department, in our department, is the motivation. It seems kind of sliding a little bit in my world here, where I'm at, and I know we touched on this a while back too, is training. Also on top of that, we struggle with that.
Yeah, I think training is a good one, and I think you hit on one. I was saving motivation, right? So here's my other list of what's changed since I got on the fire department. Me. I've changed considerably. I thought, when I got on the job, I was, on the job 15 minutes, thought I was a genius and, knew everything that was coming. And I think as you grow in the service, your approach, all of those things have to change. So I think that, one of the things that's changed certainly is me. Hopefully my behavior's gotten better instead of worse, but that remains to be seen. It depends on what audience is listening. But yeah, how about I'll jump off of Adams on this one. The methods by which we train, right? When I got on, there was no certification. I ended up taking firefighter 1 and 2 certification later on when I was an officer. I was taking level 1 and 2 because we didn't have certification when I got on. That was not something that was going on at that point in time. So I ended up getting on. Here's the keys. Don't do anything bad, and got certified. So training methodology, I guess, is what I would say has changed during the course of my tenure. John, what do you got?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking of a couple of things here. The thing that sort of entered my mind is, especially in some of the fire service, it's gone from a more of a social club to a professional organization. I can remember there being a Pepsi machine in a place or two that when you put your quarter in or whatever it was and push the Diet Pepsi button, it wasn't a Diet Pepsi that came out of the machine.
Right. Yeah.
It was some sort of other, a more adult sort of beverage. So you don't see a whole lot of that anymore. At least not in most places. So I think the fire service in general has kind of matured a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. The culture is a good one. Let me just catch Josh here, if we can. So, Josh, how about CBRN response has changed? Now we're dealing with secondary devices, right? So chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosives. We're handling things that just, we never really thought about before. Where I started was kind of a rural area. And, maybe you got a big call if you found some farmer who was blasting out stumps and you had to go out and stand by while they blew up the dynamite or something. That was a big, explosives call, and it was nothing. But, now really with the, as Josh is pointing out, thank you for that, Josh, some of the terrorist stuff and everything that we're faced with now has certainly changed our environment completely. Jim, what are you thinking? I like the one John gave me. I've been in places where the Diet Pepsi didn't give you a Diet Pepsi. I recall that. What else,
I'm
Jim?
not talking without a subpoena. No, it never happened in any of my departments. I want to clarify that. But like John, I know of some that were and perhaps even still are today. And I just think my personal view is that it's inexcusable. But back to the previous comment, a couple of them, I understand, where Adam's coming from with regard to training, and it's about motivation, and it starts at the top. It starts with you as a training officer, getting that enthusiasm within the department, and if they see that you're enthusiastic, it does help. It does spread. If they don't, and I'm going to go back to our show last week, I quoted a famous New England chief. Sometimes you just got to tell the kids to eat the broccoli because it's good for them. And if they can't, then it's time to move on and find something that will. So be that as it may. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of the training. I'm a huge proponent of having a cohesive department that gets along well together, trains together, eats together, works together, and enjoys it. And if you can't, then there are plenty that will. Yeah. I know that sounded a bit harsh, but that's just where I'm coming from.
Well, yeah, maybe there's a whole show there, Jim. I think there's probably a whole show on that one somewhere.
I think there is.
Yeah, I think there could be. Ethan, what else? You've had some good ones here. I know you're studying. I swear you're Googling while we're not looking. I think you're multitasking there. Go ahead.
How about a sort of negative one, and that's budget cuts and staffing reductions. I'm sure when Pete and the rest of us on the panel started, we were riding much heavier than we are today.
Yeah, I think budgets and the whole public opinion, right? So not only is it the budget of staffing and operationally running the department, but certainly here in the Northeast we're seeing it, and really all over the country. Firefighters' pensions are being attacked, benefits at all levels are being attacked. So that's a great one. That's something that has changed since we started. That's an excellent one. Adam, what else you got?
Coming from I'm going to go ahead and go back on our department. Something I've had a great opportunity to be involved with and start up, as most of you guys are talking, is a junior fire program. I've had the opportunity, the department of let me start a junior firefighter program up, and it's been going pretty good. I've got 5 young junior firefighters that are just eager to train. They're always constantly, hey, when's our next training? When's our next training? And seeing them out there and learning this stuff, what we do and where we come from and what we're all about, it's an awesome deal that we got going here with these young ones, and seeing that, years to come, that there's going to be still volunteers out there, whether they could go into the career department and stuff like that. But I mean, it's been a great opportunity to work with these youngsters.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I think, John, did you allude to the fact that you started as a young explorer or a junior or something like that? Didn't you mention it?
Yeah, both. I started in the early 80s as a cadet in Connecticut, and then being a teenager at the time and my family moved out here to San Diego, ended up as an explorer here, and then ended up as a volunteer in Ohio for a little while, and then finally ended up on the job here. So yeah, the junior program, cadet program, explorer program, whatever you want to call it, where you're from, has been a tremendous program. And I know a lot of folks here in San Diego that have come through that program and been some pretty top-notch performers.
Yeah, no, there's no question.
Self-excluded, of course.
No, I think we'd include you in there without any question. I started as a youngster, and I never realized this tie, near and dear to Jim's heart, is one of my young explorers that started with me as a youngster is now a senior battalion chief in the city of Apopka, Florida. He's a shift commander down there and started with me as a youngster. So I'm not sure he'd admit to that in public, but he does admit it to me regularly. So that's a good thing. So
it's a great department. It really is.
Oh yeah, he's a fine young man. It's a great story. I won't embarrass him here, but it is the greatest story you ever seen. He was involved. He got on a small career department here, a very small career department. And he had this Volkswagen Bug, in the day it was a Volkswagen Beetle, and I pass him, and he's at the ramp of the station, and it looks like, he's a level 5 hoarder with everything that's hanging out of the Beetle or whatever, and I said, where are you going? What's up? He said, I'm sick and tired of cold weather and snow, and I'm driving, and I'm not stopping until it gets warm. And he drove to Florida, went through the academy, did everything he was supposed to do, and there he is today.
And he found a great department to work for.
Yeah, no, it's a great place. So listen, we have been through, let me just tally this for a second to see if we can do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 27, 28, 29, 30. About 31, 32 changes that this modest panel put together tonight. So what? So let's begin to summarize here. So what? We've been through, I've been a fireman for a long time. That just makes me old. What have these changes helped form us? Has it helped us become better firefighters? I'll save mine for the end. How have these changes in equipment, culture, training, everything we do, the things around us that Ethan brought up, the types of cars, the types of buildings, the fuels, etc. How have these things made a difference to us, John? Of all of these things that we talked about, what are your thoughts as we begin to summarize here? What about change in the fire service? I think it's a good thing myself. I think it's a good thing. But how has it formed you as a battalion chief in San Diego? What have these changes meant to you?
Well, change isn't bad. I think some of it, there's a couple of things where, a couple of the items where I talked about areas where we've changed back to the old ways. So for me, the change just kind of diving into the world of the psychological bit. It's more slides in the tray. It's things we can dig back to the past and look to and say, hey, this is what we used to do. Let's try it again. And it's like the big deal going on with all the fire science stuff right now. A lot of that is stuff that we used to do before. Before, we couldn't go in as deep because we didn't have the SCBA, we didn't have the PP and everything. We didn't have the fuels we're facing now. So we just didn't go in because we only had two SCBA units per rig. So we fought more fire from the outside. So some of it is just kind of circular, I think. Just kind of what goes around comes around.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I heard a great quote earlier this week, which I thought was kind of interesting, right? So why is the fire service steeped in tradition? Because a lot of that stuff worked. And that's kind of interesting, right? Where, as you're saying, we're doing things, oh, this is brand new. Well, the point of me doing this show tonight is some of the younger folks that might be watching this show, what you think is a great idea maybe is not a great idea. It's been had before. It's kind of a little historical perspective. So thanks for that, John. That was that tied in exactly.
I saw that same quote you did, and I thought it was well, I won't say genius because that'd make the fella's head swell up too much. But I did think it was a pretty good quote. One that I pulled out. We always hear 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress, but I like to say 200 years of tradition enhanced by progress. So that's sort of seems to fit in there.
Yeah, excellent. Jim, what's your summary? So you endured these 30 changes and then some and a bunch we didn't talk about. How has it affected you? How has it made it better fire officer, better firefighter? What are you thinking?
Well, if we look at our NFPA standards and we look at so much other material that's out there, it's usually written and or applied because someone paid in blood. And if we don't change accordingly, I had an old fire chief that used to say, when you're green, you grow, when you're ripe, you rot. And so it's important that we stay on top of the newest technology and the newest information that's out there. So having said that, I go back to thanking those that have gone before us even when you look at line of duty death report and NFPA standards, because most standard was written because either of an injury or death.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Jim. Well said. Ethan, you're not here yet, but you're joining. But you see the rapid changes occurring. What does it mean to you as a young person that's interested in the career?
Well, I definitely think most of the changes that we talked about tonight, and even one I just thought of now, seatbelts and the use of them, I think they've all been to improve our safety. Like Jim said, there's people that came before us that paid in blood, and I think that we really need to embrace some of these changes because of that fact.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Adam, what you're hearing some historical perspective, and we made it light. I like to make it a little bit of humor interjected here. But what are your thoughts in the time you've been on the department? How has that changed you? What are the changes, and how has it affected you?
I don't mind changes. Some changes I can deal with, some I can't. But as being in a younger firefighter, it's helped me grow in this job. To actually see the changes over the years, and like, Ethan said and Jim said, safety, and people paid, the ultimate sacrifice, to get us where we're at today. So I mean, it's just, I don't know. I'm kind of drawing a blank.
All right, no, that's good. That's good. And I'll just recap. You know what? We did see a lot of changes, and some of the things we did, I talked about here tonight, I can tell you I'm certainly not proud of today. As a progressive fire instructor and things, I mean, we did some very, very crazy things that were probably the best thing to do at the time. But in hindsight, as we look in our rearview mirror, it seems like pretty stupid things that we did at that point in time. And I think, I think you have to be a leader in this business, has to know, I want somebody to learn from my mistakes. The point of some of what we did here tonight is to maybe make some folks go poke around and Google some of the stuff we talked about and look around and see where we came from. Talk a little bit about our background, but to let people know that you should learn from some of the things that have come by, and it might make a difference to you in your career as you go on. So I think we had a great show. I appreciate everybody's participation. We had a great audience tonight listening. That was pretty good. I appreciate the comments from them. All good stuff. And we hope, certainly, that you will see us here next week. We will be here again next week for Firefighting Today. You can see the archive of this show on firefightingtoday.com. We've just kind of revamped the website, so the website's looking much better than it was. All of the archives are in pretty good order now, and we'll be doing some other updates there. So we encourage you to join us next week at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, where we'll be back here for Firefighting Today. Thanks, everybody.